Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on the things within your control. So today's episode is viewing competition. So how do you come to see competition? Is it something threatening that needs to be avoided, to be squashed, to preserve yourself? Or is it an opportunity to rise up to it and be better? For many of us, competition can make us feel like we're not enough, knowing that there are others who might be better at certain things than we are. Self-doubt can trigger us to be defensive, and we're more focused on what others are doing well that throws off our focus to do the best that we can. And being concerned about how others are doing, it naturally makes us compare ourselves. Whether it's good or bad. It could be looking at all the things others do better than us that makes us feel down about ourselves. Or it could be looking at all the things that they do wrong or poorly to make us feel better about ourselves. This is not going to serve us well because it means being dependent on what others are doing. There's always going to be others that are better than us at certain things, and we'll be better at certain things than others. Either way, this perspective is putting competition above or below us. Come to see competition as a reference point or guide to see how to do things better that you can apply. To have a healthy admiration for what they do and learning how to do it. We all have a need to feel significant. And if others do what we do that makes us feel significant, it can naturally make us question things about ourselves, wondering the validity or a skill level that we once thought. At times in our minds, we tend to overestimate or underestimate what we do. Overestimating sets up for a rude awakening, taking on more than what you're skilled for at a certain time. Underestimating keeps you from even trying because doubt says you're not good enough. So save yourself the trouble of embarrassing yourself. Remember, things are never good or as bad as they seem. They're right in the middle. They are neither a complete disaster or totally flawless. View competition the same way will better help gauge yourself to find the right balance so you can rise up to it, to perform your best and be less concerned about how you compare to others. Strive to feel better about yourself by focusing on the things that you do well. What can you do better and how you've progressed instead of feeling superior to others. And being superior to others, it's putting down others to make yourself appear bigger. This does no one any good as it creates hostility and resentment towards what feels threatening. It brings out that survival mode that is willing to sabotage competition instead of rising up to it to be better. The easy thing to do is to go with the survival mode. What's going to help overcome this is to really stop and analyze the competition in a neutral manner, as it's going to take away that emotional sharpness so you can learn from them. This lowers the wall that hides the truth, no longer coming up with justifying yourself or your actions. Come to state the facts of what the competition does do well, where they can improve on, and this gives you an objective point of view that allows you to be a little bit detached from how you feel compared to them. Maybe what you come to find out is where they can improve on is what you do a little bit better. But try not to get hung up on how exactly you compare. It's mainly just a reference point to guide you in a potentially good direction. Just because others do it a certain way doesn't mean it's going to work for you. There's many correct or effective ways to do things, so we got to remember that. Going through this mental exercise helps you get accustomed to the competition you're facing, and it helps to deal with some of the associated pressure. This is really applicable in many things that we encounter, whether it's school, work, or sports. If we take a look in school, when it comes to taking a test, does it really matter if you got a 94 and somebody else got a 98? Is there a need to one-up somebody to make yourself feel better? A score of 94 does not diminish what you've done simply because somebody else got a 98. Or maybe you got a 68 and many other students got higher scores. But if you improved on your scores from previously maybe it only being 61, that's still something of value because it shows that you've improved, that you were better than last time. Sometimes in these cases, when it comes to how we stack up to one another and we fall short, where we're below average, obviously that makes us feel down because we naturally want to keep up with others. And it really does affect how we come to value ourselves. But then there's also cases where things become highly competitive and multiple people are vying for a limited resource. And that resource is the prize, whether it's a job promotion, landing a big fish client, winning a large sum of money, or a trophy. This is what happens in the animal kingdom, where they're competing directly with each other for water, for food, for land, because someone has to be declared a winner. In instances like this, it can be somewhat cutthroat. If we just look at the movie Talladega Nights, the ballad of Ricky Bobby was a professional race car driver that would consistently come in first. And he had the motto, if you're not first, you're last. Meaning that anything below first did not matter and it squandered everything about what you've worked for. When the focus is all about coming in first, being at the top, it creates an all or nothing scenario. And if winning first is what it's all about, then it desensitizes the joy of winning and it becomes more of a relief when it does happen. So when you come up short, it can be devastating, that damages your self-worth. So it's directly tying your worth to what you do. Many of the circumstances that we all face are not as grave as what animals have to face to continue to survive. For many of us, it's not a win or else you're going to starve. Now, there might be certain scenarios, but many times it's not as dire as what the threatening feeling may evoke. This just takes a little bit of taking a step back to gain a big picture point of view. So in whatever things that we're pursuing, whether it's a certain job promotion that we're competing with others for, or we're jockeying for a spot on a team, or even fighting for a starting role on a certain team, and whether you achieve your objective or not, in the end, your life is not dependent on it. Meaning that if you fall short of it, it doesn't mean that's the end of it, that it's all over. It's just a certain chapter that you've experienced. You'll eventually recover from it. It just might take a little bit more time. So come to see competitors really as a way to learn from them, whether they're both good or bad, and avoid measuring yourself based on how well or poorly that they do. Now that we touched on competition is not an all or nothing situation, we can start to dive into a little bit more about winning or achieving your objective is not solely dependent on somebody else losing. So in a head-to-head matchup of a particular team sport such as basketball or soccer, the winner comes at the expense of the loser. But there's so many different situations that show us there can be multiple winners in the same realm. So in a classroom setting, there can be many students that can excel at a particular subject. So just because you did outstanding in physics and somebody else did as well, it's not that either one of you have diminished each other's work, but can be proud of what you've done, but also gracefully respect what another person has done well. The pie is big enough for everyone to enjoy the many successes on their own, but sometimes we do crave that lone spotlight where we can feel significant. But as long as you come to value yourself, what else do you really need? The approval of others? And this just emphasizes that your happiness doesn't have to come at the expense of somebody else. That we all, or many of us, can be happy in the endeavors that we choose to pursue. We have to condition ourselves to avoid falling into the trap of when somebody shares their good news, to resist the urge to want to share your own good news, to not be left out. So when others share a significant moment that makes them feel great about themselves, go ahead and congratulate them and give them words of encouragement that you recognize and respect what they've done. When you're able to do this, you detach yourself from seeing competition as a threat and more as an opportunity to be respectful and cordial. This is one of the great traits that many successful people have, is that they celebrate the successes of others because that creates an environment that uplifts everyone, as opposed to trying to keep people down to make themselves look bigger. I can vividly remember when I was a kid, in whatever games that I played and I lost, it was such a strong feeling of letdown and frustration that it would bring out the worst in me. But over time, I realized it was such a hindrance to my development. And what really helped me was just watching the great sportsmanship in certain athletes. The way certain people demonstrated a high level of composure even when they lost, to go ahead and congratulate their opponents, shaking their hands, saying, "Hey, job well done." And this really opened up my eyes that that is the way to handle myself ideally. When I see players on the losing team going up to their opponent and saying, or "great effort," or "I'm really proud of you," to me, that was so impressive, because even in such a big moment where personally it can feel crushing, they're able to put aside their individual needs to not bring down the team or the players that they were up against. And I remember I consciously made an effort to handle myself in the same manner. But in the beginning, it was very hard to do so. I thought it was a little bit phony, but the more that I practiced it, it actually lessened the blow. I wouldn't take it as seriously as before if I came up short in whatever I was competing for. And I think this is how many of us can win, because it sets up for better relationships with others and ourselves much better. But ultimately, come to see competition not so much as you're directly competing with somebody else, but you're directly competing with your own self. So really, you're competing with how you did before so you can do better now and be better later on. This actually helps to harness much more of your attention on yourself, because you're heavily focused on all the things that you did do previously, whether good or bad. And it's great to have a balanced approach, taking the good and the bad and building upon it. You got to be constructive in this way of evaluating your own self. So those bad things, while it might hurt to acknowledge and replay them, really come to see why they went wrong and how you can improve incrementally, because you'll find the answers for the next time. Part of what makes somebody a great learner is the ability to learn from mistakes, to look at the series of events where things went off course. And this requires not looking to blame, but simply looking at where things went wrong and what could have been done better the next time. The more you go through evaluating your own mistakes, the more comfortable you come with the process. It's important to be balanced, not too soft where you give yourself too much slack, but not too critical that you beat yourself up for it. When you can find that right touch, it can be so motivating that you want another opportunity to put in play what you've gained. This is the piece of competing with yourself that allows you to break through to a higher performance level, because it's about you and what's in your control, not about what others are doing, which is outside of your control. This just further builds your initiative and hunger in your pursuits. The other part of competing with yourself is acknowledging the things that you did well and building on it. And this is where confidence comes from. The better you do, the better you feel going forward. This gives you the ability to be loose and give your best. Come to appreciate the entire process that led to the results that you got, because the ego is going to take things for granted if you're not careful. It can keep you in that same comfortable spot that is not going to help you advance. Whether you perform well in school or work, know what exactly you do well and the details involved that make it happen. Forgetting the details is a recipe for things to deteriorate, so make sure to emphasize them and refining it consistently. This builds momentum in the right direction. It's going to elevate you to excelling at an extremely high level. At times, you will do better than you did last time, and at other times, you may be off, out of rhythm. But the more that you can focus on doing things consistently well, over time, great muscle memory is built that make things a bit more automatic. As you focus on what you do well, the concept is still the same: to be balanced, avoiding overestimating and underestimating yourself. You're more likely to be right in the middle of the two. In competing with yourself, the only person you're good enough for is yourself. You're less likely to care what others think because it's about what's in your control. Why waste time worrying about what others do? That just means less energy to use on yourself. Silence that outside noise by being loud in your head about what you're doing. While competition can bring out some of the ugly stuff within us, it also can bring out some great things about ourselves that we might have not realized. In heated competition where things are going back and forth, it can lead to innovation, finding solutions to challenges that seem too difficult to overcome. Over the long run, if you can stay at it, the mental blocks of feeling threatened by competition, you'll eventually get acclimated to it where it serves as a challenge that is embraced. Often in the beginning, when we're pursuing our desires, that wide-eyed excitement is eventually met with wanting to throw up and retreating to safety because of feeling inadequate. This natural process needs to be worked through to develop withstanding the hard times, to build resilience. Resilience is what's going to allow you to stare down what seems to be insurmountable with a dazed and confused look, to see beyond what hurts and find viable solutions. This can come from being conditioned in the sense of, look at how your brothers and sisters are performing at a high level, or constantly being referred to your classmates about how we should be emulating them. It's understandable the notion of what they're trying to get at, to use it as motivation, but it actually can be a deterrent. Really, there needs to be more patience exercise that some of us take a lot longer than others to really get in the groove of things. Eventually, this leads to feeling like we're not competing well with others, meaning keeping up with the high performers. It somehow means we're just not good enough and we should find something else. But that is only a temporary view on what's going on. Maybe that you're not at a high skill level at that moment. But with enough consistency and commitment towards working and figuring out how to get better, you can break past that initial daunting feeling. So the next time you find yourself in that position where you've fallen short and you happen to feel that way, be proactive and say, what exactly did I gain from this? What specific knowledge or information about what I did or what I need to do better that I can apply going forward? Thinking in this manner constantly keeps you acquiring these building blocks that are eventually going to lead to great ways of scheming and innovating. For many inventors that have made contributions, no matter how big or small, they've consistently tried different things. Some of them were disappointing. They felt like blunders and maybe even a waste of time. But what all of these people had in common was the urge to figure it out. Somehow they're able to stick with it, getting past those feelings of self-doubt that they should cave in and do something that's easy. If you just take a look at the company Uber, they disrupted the ride-sharing business that was dominated by the taxi industry. They saw that there were some flaws with how people can get a ride when they really needed it. At times, when you needed a ride, there was not a taxi available, and eventually, they got the idea of a on-demand ride service that can come pick you up at a specific location at a specific time through just scheduling it on your phone. Or if you look at Airbnb, they saw an opportunity not directly to compete with hotels as they wanted to offer a bit of a unique rental experience that was more than just a room and a bathroom with a lobby, a place that you can stay and it feels like home, not just a place to spend the night. Competition led them to look at their business models in very unique ways as opposed to just copying what was already in place. Both of these companies saw ways that the established businesses in where they were seeking to compete with could be improved on and capitalized on it. So you can leverage competition to your advantage to see what they might be missing and focus on doing it well. But hopefully you come to see competition not so much as a threat, but really as a way that it can help you learn and grow. It does not have to be a winner comes at the cost of the loser, because that's focused on a finite number, meaning that we're limited in what we're competing for. That is playing into the short game that is focused on one-upping the next person to feel the need to be superior. There's an abundance for all of us to enjoy what we need if you can focus on the long game. Let's get away from talking about who's the best, who's number one, that we're going to crush the competition and all that mumbo jumbo, because it's really just drawing lines to see who's with us, who's against us. If you're not with us, that means you're the enemy. This creates that tribal mentality that just pits us against each other, and then it trickles into every other part of our lives. So if you don't like what I like, you don't agree with the things that I say, or you don't like the foods that I eat, or the activities that I enjoy, then somehow that makes you an enemy. No, we can all like different things and still be courteous and respectful to each other. Just like in the same respect that we can be competing directly or indirectly for specific rewards such as a client or a trophy, and whoever wins, it does not diminish the other person's worth and effort. Life is not so much a competition, because really, who are you trying to impress? Everybody else? Does it serve any value to say that you're winning at friendships, that you're winning at marriage, that you're winning at the relationships that you have with your family members or friends? Who keeps score of that? And if it's kept, what purpose does it really serve for the better? What really matters is what you think and how you feel about the things that you do. Are you proud of the effort that you put in your pursuits, where no matter the outcome, you really come to value how you handle yourself all the way from start to finish? Yes, competition can be a good thing if you see it from a constructive perspective. It's a good guideline to see what those that are excelling are doing well, but just because it works for them, it may not work for you. The natural inclination is to feel threatened by competition, that you're competing for a limited resource, making sure others don't take what you want. But in the end, really you're just competing with yourself, competing to be better, because when that is your focus, the things outside of your control become so much less bothersome. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right, until next time.